Well, everybody, good evening. I thought the grog was probably more fun. It's kind of hard to compete with that, but thanks for the opportunity to come speak with you tonight. First, I want to thank Colonel Jason Patla, who I've known for years, and it is out of my high regard for him that I came here tonight. So thanks for what you and Mariah do for all of these cadets and for your staff. Major General Downer, sir, thanks for your leadership. Thanks for your service to our nation. And I think guys of my generation owe a debt of gratitude to your generation for everything that you did and learned in Vietnam and how you made us better. I hope we make you proud. Sir. He's not alone in being a representative of that generation. Brigadier General Williams, sir, likewise for you. And sir, thank you for your continued investment in our future here at Embry-Riddle, and also what you did at the United States Air Force Academy, sir, during your service. I'll continue because there's more of these. Colonel Scott Reese, sir, thanks for your service as the detachment commander here for the 157th, for your continued work here at Embry-Riddle, and I know that you're proud of Skylar. That is just so wonderful. Hey, the grog's over, right? For Colonel Chuck Graff, sir, thanks for your involvement in your alma mater as a 1975 graduate here at Detachment. And then Lieutenant Colonel Stan Goldstein, sir, thanks. I get to read about how you encourage our future leaders through your service to the River Rats and to your service to the Air Warrior Courage Foundation. You really do invest in our future leaders, and by the way, my dad says hi. And then Dr. Monica Mendoza, ma'am, I didn't get a chance to meet you. Are you here somewhere? You made it, ma'am. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Congrats on Stetson University's designation as the newest branch campus to join Detachment 157. This is my first visit here at Embry-Riddle and to the detachment, and I'm amazed at the support that this detachment receives from Embry-Riddle, from the surrounding community, and I'm grateful for all that Stetson might be able to do to follow suit. Congratulations again. For the cadre, got a chance to watch him in action yesterday. For the 11 of you who serve so selflessly here, thanks for all that you put into these cadets. You know, a ratio of 11 to 400, those are tough odds, and it takes a ton of energy, and I watched you exert it yesterday. The cadets will never forget what you put into them. They never will. And then finally, and probably most, to the cadets of Detachment 157, thanks for a great day yesterday. I like everything that I saw. You were my first introduction to Air Force ROTC. This is my first introduction to Det 157 and Embry-Riddle, and I think you have a great thing going. And you know, when you go do stuff like this, thanks to your gracious invitation, Colonel Padla, you figure you're going to give something. And then time and time again, what you realize that you received so much more than what you put into it. So thanks for all that you gave me back during my time with you yesterday and tonight. So tonight my speech will focus on the cadets, right? And I'd like to leave you with just maybe 3 things to consider. First, make the most of the Air Force you're in as you prepare for the Air Force that you'll enter. Next, I'll give you some suggestions on how to proceed when you serve in your next Air Force, the Air Force that I represent. And then I want to talk just to maybe a few of the opportunities and challenges that next Air Force is currently facing, where we depend on your service to make the difference. Okay. So first of all, make the most of the Air Force you're in here in Detachment 157 as it prepares you for my Air Force that I represent. I've got a few suggestions for you on that. Having been a cadet, and you get this, Give yourself to the program. This is your program, and submit to it, and just trust that it's going to make you into those second lieutenants that you aspire to be. Now, that does take some trust. I don't know when the last time was you sat there and go, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense. And whether that's FDP or maybe some activity on a Saturday morning, or maybe it's paintball like we did last night. I'm not really sure who won that one, by the way. But just trust that there is a bigger picture. And I think that will become apparent to you years after you leave this place. You know, that does take a bit of loyalty, in a sense. And so be loyal to Det 157, all that it stands for its principles, to its leaders. And just trust that they're going to get you there. And when you commission, as some folks are getting ready to do, as Fisher just did, he's still awake. As a big rock. Be loyal to this institution for what it's going to do for you. Some of it won't make sense for a while. And then I think some of it, just as a case in point, for your wing commanders, so forget Menden Vidsta and Cadet Saida. Some of you won't get to function in the leadership roles like you've had until you're real colonels. For others of you, you'll get to exercise the same leadership that you've exercised here as second lieutenants, right? It'll depend on the AFSC. And so I fell into kind of that former category where I really didn't get to function like you guys are functioning until I was a colonel. Okay, so like I said, give it a while. You'll see. Next, don't defer your growth. And I think sometimes there's a temptation to do that, like, yeah, I'll get to that later. Or in this chapter of my life, this is where I'm going to invest myself, and this is where I'm going to take the efficiency. And I think growth is something that you just don't defer for a later time. I'll take effort over talent 10 times out of 10. Because the effort will go the distance where talent falters, because it's always been easy. I like late bloomers, but I'd rather you be an early bloomer and keep right on blooming. And then know that you're in an environment here where you can make mistakes and learn from mistakes. And as I watched your programs yesterday, they're absolutely cadet-led. And as the staff, the cadre work with you, it's not just about your successes, it's also about your failures and how you bounce back and how you learn from the inevitable mistakes that come from doing it. So make the most from your mistakes. As you conduct yourselves, and this is just kind of watchwords that I would offer you, don't defer this either. Your thoughts become your actions become your habits, and your habits become your character. So start early. And then commitment to excellence, and we value that, right? Excellence is a core value. But commitment to excellence is ultimately a personal choice that only each of you can make. And I see you making it right now, and it's so encouraging. So this is about making the most of the Air Force that you're in here in Det 157 and this whole experience. I think it will really behoove you to avail yourselves to the opportunities that are placed in front of you here, and they're numerous. As you look at this amazing campus, which I got to tour a little bit yesterday, as you look at the cadre and their experiences that they bring from the Air Force that we represent, and then you look at the people who surround you, and I've named some of them tonight who show up and participate and pour themselves into you here. Folks like Gunnar Fletcher. Gunnar, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for what you bring to this program and all the experience and all that you have to give. So tap that and make the most of it during this chapter of your lives. Be proud of this program and this school. For visitors, welcome the visitors when they come and learn from them. I love the questions that you gave me over our sessions yesterday. And then when you go out to Air Force bases, make the most of it. Ask all the hard questions. Go everywhere on that base. Work alongside everyone that you can. Because it's a pretty neat secret that there are really no closed doors when you're a cadet. Once you become a second lieutenant, that changes. So walk through all those open doors, and I'll tell you, I'll never forget serving alongside an F-16 crew chief on the flight line at Torrejon Air Base, Spain in 1988. And I had just finished my freshman year at the Air Force Academy. It took 10 years before I could go spend a day alongside an F-16 crew chief next. So seize those opportunities. And then finally, leave this place better than you found it. And I see that happening. This is a cadet-run program, so it is what you make of it. And the cultures and traditions and training programs, those are the ones that you're going to leave behind. And you don't want your successors, Jason, Tom, you don't want your successors to be as good as you were. You want them to be better. What are you doing to make that happen? This school, how you regard your alma mater after you walk away from it, that's also a personal choice. Wear your Embry-Riddle polo, wear your Det 157 gear, and be an ambassador for everything that this program has offered, because it sure gave you a lot, and that's how you start giving back. I think when you go through any sort of a formative, tough experience like this, there's a bit of love-hate relationship that attends all that. And what I'd offer you is that the hate part of that tends to diminish over time. Help it along. Okay, be proud of the school that you've attended. And then, like it or not, there's this indelible stamp on each of you that you were once a Detachment 157 cadet. Trust me on this. And nothing made this more clear to me than I went with my dad, who's a 1963 grad from the United States Air Force Academy. And I went with him to his 40th reunion. And at the 40th reunion, there were guys there who quit in basic training. Think about that. But what they had finally come to terms with is that they were always, at some point in their life, they were Air Force Academy cadets, and it kept them coming back. So you will always have been a cadet here in Detachment 157, whether you like it or not. So my vote is that you like it and make your peace with it. And then, for guys who are in a little bit of a later chapter of life, myself included, find ways to give back. Find ways to give back to cadets. And I think you'll find, as I have over this last day or so, you'll return so much more than you invest into it. So that would be my first suggestion here on how you make the most of this Air Force before you go to the next one. Now, when you get into the next Air Force, it's better than it looks. And so I thought maybe I'd try to convince you of that with a real short video. Yeah, you know, our Air Force, and it's neat to see when this happens, and we're doing better at it, right? We're taking the time to celebrate the things that our airmen do. And so, you know, while that's a fighter case there, and while I remain an unabashed fan of flying fighters, I think it's an example of the kinds of careers that are just sitting out there waiting for you, better than it looks. I think how you approach your job in the Air Force, whatever it is, whether it's that or something like that, whatever inspires you, I think it will make, how you approach it will make a difference on the impact that you have, but also the satisfaction that you enjoy. So I'll actually take a bit of a turn here on this before we get into all of that, which is big and larger than life and something that probably keeps you up at night thinking about, because I know it did for me. So when you graduate, the first thing I'd offer is consider resetting your balance, and then keep coming back to this balance over the course of your career. What I mean by that is, you're more than just what you do, no matter how enticing it is. And by the way, that's pretty enticing. I've lived it. Some of you will get married. Some of you will move farther from your families of origin. Some of you will move closer to your families of origin. And I think that the Air Force is doing the best that it's done in caring for families and helping nurture those relationships. However, the Air Force will not schedule your family life for you or tell you how to conduct it. That all comes down to you. It's about your balance. So families, if you could please, would you just raise your hands for a second? Families, parents, close friends, would you just raise your hands tonight, please? Can we give them a round of applause? I'd just like to say thanks, families, for your sacrifice that enables our service. Because ultimately the end goal is not rank or position or accolades, but family and relationships and next chapters together. Think about that. Renee and I come back to it every 5 years. So, with your balance reset, now you start by aspiring. And aspiring for where you go after Detachment 157. The thing I would offer you there as you think about your choices and where do I go next and what is it I want to do, is that nothing risked is nothing gained. So go big. I know that when you look at stuff like that, it looks a long way from where you are now. So if you're a cadet 4th class here tonight, you look at that and go, man, that is a really tall mountain. I'll come back at you with, why not you? Why not you? So when you get there, getting there involves some kind of initial training. And it's been fun to talk to some folks tonight. So Cheyenne and Jason, as you anticipate going to pilot training someday, that's also better than it looks. So how do you do that next step after Detachment 157 is really going to set the tone for about the next 10 years of your life. Think about that. No pressure. So I'll just give you a UPT example, but among other undergraduate training programs, I think it's probably representative. And here's the advice I would give you in that phase, that very important phase. Study for every ride. Study for every sin. Study for every test. And don't go out during the week. It really is that simple. It's like I said, I'll take effort over talent any day. For some, doing that day in and day out will simply be a matter of not resting on your laurels. For others, it'll be about coming back failure after failure and hitting again the next day. You don't necessarily know how it's going to turn out in undergraduate training, but see it through. At some point, some of those programs will involve selection or tracks, right? It's a milestone, it's a decision point on, okay, now here's what you're gonna go do on the basis of how you've performed to this point. My suggestion to you there would be, don't prejudge. Don't decide too soon. Don't decide right now. I think you should have a goal, but I think you should be open to change. And the reason I say that is, sitting where you are now, you guys know a lot, but you really don't know enough to make an informed choice about what is it that I want to do when I hit that fork in the road. Okay? So experience it. Go out and get into the middle of it. Know it for what it is to that point in the course. And also get the views of others. And then make the choice, because ultimately it's not anybody else's career. It's your career, and you only get one, and it's got to suit you. And then never look back. Okay? So reserve judgment on that. Make the choice when you have to. And then finally, as you embark on your service in your next Air Force, when you get to your first unit, your first operational unit, in whatever specialty that is, while you have arrived, you've just begun. And so for some, you will build on momentum, some awesome momentum that you have built to that point. It started here, by the way. For others, it'll be about the fresh start that you need. Make the most of that too. Embrace your profession and do it as well as you can. And as you do that, I'm reminded of a Teddy Roosevelt quote, and this is a vocational one, okay? And I quote, "Far and away the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." And trust me, the things that you're going to go do, they're really worth doing. Finally, when you go out and do all that, and everything that follows from what I just described, you're going to help propel the greatest Air Force in the world. Now, we all like to be on winning teams, right? I know some folks who even choose their teams based on whoever's winning, right? You've seen that happen for Super Bowls, and pick your sports analogy. But I'll tell you, the United States Air Force is a winning team, and you're part of it right now. I think the defense of our nation is a really high calling. Thank you for choosing it, by the way. And then, right now, you're preparing to embark on one of the most trusted institutions in the United States. Wow. I think right now our military enjoys amazing popular support. And as I consider folks of previous generations, it hasn't always been there. They've seen it differently. We're certainly not entitled to it, and it is absolutely ours to lose. Let's not lose it. You know, our national security environment is changing. You can see it, read the news, it's happening all around us. And so the environment that your Air Force is taking on, it's getting harder in some ways. You know, the good news is that after 20 years, I think we've beat back Islamic extremism and other violent extremist organizations. And frankly, that's been the fight of my generation. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. Been to those places a lot, right? Seen it for what it is, and the good part is we've prevailed, not against the ideology, but definitely against the physical structure, which in the ISIS case we'll call the physical caliphate. That one's been defeated after 4.5 years. I think there's a couple of guys living in a cave somewhere that can stay there. You know, Afghanistan and Iraq, for all the fighting that we've done there, they're to various degrees into their respective transitions to greater autonomy and self-government. So it won't be pretty, and it'll be steps forward and steps back. But they're better now than they were. And then, as a guy who does Homeland Defense now in my current job, I'm proud to say that we've averted another 9/11 style attack or worse on this homeland. We've got about an 18-year winning streak, and I'm enjoying that, for those of you who remember 9/11. At the same time, however, you know, we face the rise of near-peer rivals and great power competition, and we haven't talked about great power competition in a long time. It's so 80s. Now, however, China is increasingly a regional superpower as it grows as an economic world power. Some of that growth has been adverse to the United States' interests, which you and I protect. We face a revanchist Russia that will do all that it can to reclaim its near abroad and test the U.S. globally. So it's kind of fun from Tyndall, which is where I work right now. We had to build a plan and conduct the execution for the first Russian bomber visit to the Western Hemisphere in 5 years. They were last here in 2013. They came back in December of 2018. And we actually chose the most aggressive, and it wasn't us, it was people we call SERV. Okay? Chose the most aggressive response of the options that we gave them. And we actually put F-15s at the Yucatan Gap. So those Russian bombers approached the northern hemisphere, the northern part of the western hemisphere. We had F-15s way out over the water that said, "Good morning. Welcome to our hemisphere." Yeah. Go team. So as we deal with things like what Russia's doing right now, that just happened. I'm just talking about what they're doing in the Western Hemisphere. There's plenty going on over in Europe too. The Middle East focus is changing from violent extremist organizations to regional challengers. Anybody read the news about what we're doing with Iran lately? Yep. And then after a major rise in tensions, North Korea has been somewhat chastened, but they're still an isolated country and they're armed with nuclear weapons. And they pose significant dangers to that region, if not the world. And then finally, I've talked countries, but there's also domains. Space is a warfighting domain. Cyber has been a warfighting domain. Amen. I'm getting an amen over here. And so that's the current world in which your Air Force has to be able to prevail. So we're going to have a major role in all of this. There are things that only our Air Force can do in airspace and cyberspace. I admit, and we do it alongside all of the other services. We do things jointly, and while the joint service spells joint, A-R-M-Y, there are things that we absolutely have to do that no one else can do. And then finally, we do things through coalition. And a fun part of my job is I get to live out coalition every day, as the NORAD partnership has endured for over 60 years with our closest friend and neighbor, Canada, to the north. We work alongside those folks every day. And so to meet these challenges, and you've followed this, but just to summarize, what's our Air Force doing about this? Well, we're doing lots of things, and lots of things are operational things. But some major initiatives that are making us better right now. One, we're reinvigorating squadrons. Squadron is kind of our maneuver unit, if you think about it. We have about 3,400 squadrons across the United States Air Force. And what we don't need to do is tightly control them by way of centralized control and starve them of resources to put other places. We need to acknowledge that they are our fighting units, they should fight as a unit, that we should give them the resources we need and the autonomy that they need to function at their best. It's about less control, not more control. And it's neat to see squadron blossoming over the last year. You all are going to be in squadrons someday, and I envy you because I've been in my last squadron. Next, we're building joint leaders. And while we may not always lead a joint task force, there are some joint task forces where we can lead best. We're also working on how we offer forces in a joint task force kind of package for joint use for any kind of a conflict across the world. And so I know you have one, proximity to the other ROTC programs, but you also have cadets with you who came from other services. Learn from them, ask them questions. Learn what's good and bad and different about what their previous services can do. You're going to be joined for the rest of your careers. And then finally, in the United States Air Force, we're bringing the future faster. And what that means is, while we do have big acquisition programs that take time, we need to look for ways to incentivize new ideas and faster approaches and out of the box. Thinking in my own life right now for my work at First Air Force, we've made some pretty quick decisions and taken some risk to let some great ideas from the field go forth and influence a weapons system. It's really fun to watch. I think recently at kind of a forum, where folks were pitching contract ideas. I think the Air Force awarded a contract in 5 minutes. So that's how you bring isn't that awesome? Yeah, that's how you bring the future faster. And so if that sounds agile and responsive, we're really trying to be. So those are just some things right now that your Air Force is working on. That's it. That's just it for starters. And so as you watch our Air Force from this Air Force, I hope that you like what you see. And I hope that you like what we're doing. And then as you consider what it's going to be like to make that transition, I just ask that you remember, during your time in Det 157, make the most of your time in this Air Force. It's habit forming. Next, look forward to serving as a part of your next Air Force. By the way, one of those terms, I know it struck you here from that video, it's about team. Look forward to joining that team. In that case, the team was fighter pilots. Some of you will go do that. Some of you will go do other things. But the team that you enter, enjoy being a part of that team and make it great. The Air Force follows you. And then it should be apparent from all this discussion, we need you. The challenges facing our Air Force need you. The challenges that face America, we need you. And so I look forward to seeing you out there and serving alongside you. Thanks so much.